Hey, what's up everyone? Alex here, back with another video on the World Othello Championship 2022. And this time around I'll actually be looking at specific players in terms of the games played, and I'd like to do some kind of player profiling and maybe even opening analysis. So I have with me this website right now at the World Othello Championship 2022. I wanted to just quickly point out, there are a couple of features that you can use. This one being extremely useful is the cross table. So I probably want to kind of look at some of the opening patterns and just see whether some players are actually playing with fixed opening sets, fixed patterns. I think this is often the case for the players at the very top. If they prepare certain sets of openings for a particular world championship, they're always going to play more or less the same kind of variation since they've kind of prepared for the tournament. So let's quickly jump into some of these games. So I just wanted to go into the cross table quickly and just bring up an Excel just to put in the large opening set. So I just named this as WOC 2022 opening set, name of player, black against perpendicular, black against diagonal, white against Stephenson, which seems to be one of the most popular ones today, and then white against tiger. Maybe we'll be able to kind of identify a few key opening sets that each of the players play. So obviously I'm going to start with the world champion for this year, Mr. Kento Urano. So how I would actually do is just simply go to the cross table, and of course thanks to the diligence of the World Othello Federation and also Mr. Emmanuel Lazard for putting up the transcripts. I know it's extremely tedious just to kind of follow the physical transcripts just to get games together, but they really put in a lot of effort. So if I just click on any of the links here, for example, Mr. Kento Urano's round 1 game, and just kind of expand this a little, what I would do is actually simply to just kind of click through the game. So if you can see the opening, Kento Urano plays white perpendicular, and this opening is actually a -12 opening to e3 if I'm not wrong. So I wouldn't say that this is a common opening set. So I would actually classify this game more as a game between an expert and potentially a player who is more towards like a beginner level, or somebody who is relatively new to the game and not playing at the optimal level. And over here you can see almost immediately Mr. Kento Urano has kind of run black out of moves, and I think the final score being 62-2 kind of justifies the difference in standard. So what Mr. Kento Urano did was basically just dominate the game through mobility, grab an edge, and then kind of pull your opponent to the X square, grab the corner, and then basically sweep up the rest of the disc. So this is kind of like a typical strategy for an expert to kind of play against somebody who is probably a relatively newer player. And of course you see the board is a very nice kind of symmetrical shape, only leaving 2 discs for black. So I think this one doesn't really contribute to identify opening sets, so let's go for the next one. I'll just quickly click through. So the next one is against Anthony Go. So Anthony usually plays white diagonal, so that's typical. So you can see Kento Urano plays the cow opening. So basically we can tell from here Kento Urano plays a very orthodox game and plays a very book level of game. So I can almost conclude that from an opening perspective, black actually plays cow against diagonal, and a very strong diagonal control early on just to kind of dominate the game. So I'll just close this out, and in the Excel against black against diagonal, I like to say cow opening for Mr. Kento Urano, just to kind of largely mark that one down. And of course, if there are other games throughout the tournament that he plays something differently, it'll be interesting to kind of note. So next game, he plays white perpendicular, and he's up against a tiger opening over here. And you can see he goes for the central rose bill opening, which is a very kind of safe book opening, I would say. So he's definitely extremely well versed. I think throughout the tournament he didn't really make many mistakes. So obviously this opening is his comfort zone, and yeah, I think it's perfectly fine to actually have a specialized opening set to prepare for any given tournament. It helps you, saves time in the opening, saves energy for the kind of thinking through which move might be optimal. Sorry if my computer is lagging a little bit. I think the disc being flipped a little later, and it's extremely efficient to kind of play with a fixed opening. Even I think Ralph, who is quite a seasoned player, I think unfortunately kind of fell prey to this fixed opening set. So let's put in white against Tiger, Central Rose Bill. I think that's fair to kind of note down. And then against Arthur, let's take a look. So they played to a very book-based draw in this game, as I understand. Black playing Stephenson. So against white perpendicular, Black is actually playing Stephenson. And then of course against Komoth, he's basically playing the kind of standard book sequence to kind of pull off a draw. So against Black against white perpendicular, I would say, you know, he plays Stephenson. And of course, it's up to white to kind of decide whether is it a Komoth or a No Kung opening. So let's look at the next game against Lee Chun-Wan from Hong Kong. So Mr. Kento Urano is playing white, and he is up against Stephenson, and he does choose to play Komoth over here. Komoth basically means F3, and No Kung basically means G5 in this case, and white does play F3. So I would say Mr. Kento Urano against, you know, white against Stephenson, he plays Komoth. And I think that's pretty much consistent across his games that I've observed, at least through the tournament. So yeah, I would say this is largely consistent, and that's what I've seen in his game. This is his larger kind of opening set. Obviously, there will be some other games that I think players might have played, like a Rose variation against him, and I think he plays a typical kind of book against Rose. So I'd like to kind of jump over to Arthur's game, actually, just to see whether there are any opening patterns, just to kind of observe. So let's click on game 1. So usually at the round 1 of each World Othello Championship, a lot of luck is involved in terms of the pairing. So if you do get somebody who is, you know, relatively new in the game, it's not uncommon. So white is playing perpendicular and was up against you know, this standard cat opening to Sakaguchi. So I think it's quite a fixed book, and white didn't really have to kind of worry too much about variation, and instead just kind of play optimal quiet moves just to play out the game. So I don't really see any particular strong opening from this. So he's just countering as per normal book. So maybe against more seasoned competition, you'll be able to see certain opening set preferences. So over here, Arthur was black. Brian Rose, 2001 world champion. So Arthur is playing Stephenson against the white perpendicular. And then basically Brian went to play Komoth, and Arthur played Logistello. So just maybe taking one step further, black against perpendicular Stephenson to Logistello might be fair to kind of say. So I think Arthur prepared pretty well for Logistello, and I've kind of seen that throughout the tournament, him playing Logistello extremely well on a tempo basis. So I like that. I like his game. So again, over here against Ollie, this time Ollie played No Kung instead of Komoth, like what Brian Rose did. So Arthur played, you know, Stephenson against white perpendicular. So I would say that's still fairly in line. And against No Kung, he's playing just to counteract the opponent's opening. A lot on line control over here, you can see. So let's go to the next game. Okay, against Urano, that was basically Arthur playing white Komoth. So I think I can immediately say white Stephenson. Arthur was kind of leaning towards the Komoth opening. So let's take a look at other games, perhaps. So we're probably looking more for him against Tiger, just to see what kind of opening, and also black against Diagonal. So maybe black against Dimate. If I'm not wrong, Dimate plays white Diagonal. So let's see. So over here, Arthur plays Heath opening. It's a very edge play based opening, and I think I've also seen Matthias play this particular variation. So it's interesting to kind of see that happening. So black against Diagonal, Arthur plays Heath. Heath tends to be a little bit more towards the edge instead of cow. So probably not, you know, it's probably slightly more risky a strategy to undertake. So let's take a look at other games, maybe against Imre leader. Let's take a look. So Arthur is playing against Rose, quite a typical Rose book, and Imre is playing a Murakami variation, probably just to kind of surprise the opponent a little. didn't prove very effective, I guess. Let's take a look against Oh Jong-mok from Korea, strong player as well. So over here, Arthur again is playing Stephenson against that. So I guess right now what we want to look for is white against Tiger for Arthur. So let's see whether there are any Tiger players. I'm not too sure whether there are any Tiger players, but let's take a look. So Larry is also from Finland playing Stephenson. So I don't really see a white Tiger opening, so it's kind of hard to be able to tell the opening sets. And you can see, yeah, okay, so Katie is playing Black Tiger, so extremely good. So Arthur, you can see he's playing into the standard Rose Bill variation. So yeah, we can probably kind of conclude that yes, Arthur plays a Rose Bill against the White Tiger. I mean, again, as white against Black Tiger. So yeah, that's interesting. So I think if you look at these openings, it's a fairly optimal, probably at most within a -2 range. So it's a very tight opening. So one of the interesting things we want to kind of observe is to see whether the top players are playing within a very tight opening range, and you know, maybe that same kind of strategy could apply for you next time as a player when you go towards the World Othello Championship. So let's take a look at Mikel Borassi's game. So he lost the first round against Larry, which was a bit surprising, but let's see. So he plays Black Tiger and against the Banana opening. Interesting. So I think it's a fairly book sequence. Larry played a very nice kind of out of book sequence. So let's just say Black Tiger opening for Mikel. And maybe let's see whether there are any diagonal players. Maybe against the Japanese junior. So indeed, the Japanese junior is playing white diagonal, so I would kind of classify Mikel as playing Cow here. Although I haven't looked through all of his games, but just to kind of collect a couple of opening sets. White against Stephenson, white against Tiger. If I take a look at maybe this game, let's see whether we get any interesting ones. Okay, so against Tiger, Mikel is playing the usual kind of Rose Bill variation, I guess. But because Yasmin actually played an earlier variation, it's hard to tell which opening set he wanted to go into. Let's take a look at another white game then. Against Andrei Slabov. So yeah, over here you can see Mikel choosing Tamenori, which is again one of those very tight draw line openings to kind of go to. I think he wants to play safe. Tamenori should actually be placed in White Tiger slot. So we're looking for a white against Stephenson opening set game. So let's take a look. Maybe against Omori, perhaps. Let's see. Oh, Omori plays Brightwell opening, so that's probably not the best example to kind of give. So let's look at the next one. Okay, against Ollie. Rose branch, probably not what we want to see. So let's take a look at the next one. Okay, so Roberto plays Stephenson, and Mikel basically chose the Komoth instead of the No-Kong, so it's kind of safe to say Komoth is preferred. So, although there was this observation about players playing more No-Kong openings than Komoth, but it seems like the very top players are playing Komoth pretty often there. Let's put in Katie. So now just going into Katie's game, just to kind of construct opening set for her. Let's take a look at what Katie plays. So obviously Katie is the very first time female semi-finalist in the the World Championship for at least a while. Katie playing white Tamenori against Frederick, many Tiger, many blacks. So yeah, over here I think Tamenori is also a very popular opening and a safe opening to kind of play as white. Let's take a look at black against, probably, is this Nikki or Erwin? Okay, so let's take a look over here. Katie playing black and Erwin playing an early dragon opening, and Yeah, basically white jumping in to play book. I think this is not the main branch, so we wouldn't be covering that. Let's look at another game. So Katie against Akihiro. So Katie against Akihiro plays Tiger, opening against Central Rose, Bill, white perpendicular. So again, we can probably put Tiger over here for Katie as the main branch. Let's see whether she has any black against diagonal. Let's see, black against diagonal, maybe Arthur, I'm not too sure. Or Roberto. Let's take a look. No, Arthur doesn't play diagonal. Let's see whether Roberto plays diagonal. So Roberto does play diagonal, and I've seen a lot of Italians play diagonal opening actually, including Di Mattei and of course the late Marconi, Francesco Marconi. So Katie is playing Heath, so that's kind of interesting to note. Against that diagonal, you can see Heath. And let's take a look at white against Stephenson. Let's see what kind of openings she plays. Not too sure if Samuel Clinton plays Stephenson, but let's see whether we can get one here. So indeed, Samuel is playing Stephenson and Katie plays Nokong. Right. So I think one of the very interesting things about this kind of World Championship, and I've seen Finland seems to be, all the Finnish players seems to play a very strong Nokong game. So it's interesting to kind of see, and their variation tends to be fairly similar in a sense that is more uncommon, but if you kind of like just stack their games together, you would kind of see a pattern in terms of the Nokong that is being played. So I think there you have it. It's a very basic form of kind of just observing opening sets. Just on a very higher level in terms of the branch, you can then kind of see what kind of openings that the top players play. You can see Komoth is pretty popular as white against Stephenson. You can see Cow and Heath being the two main +0 variations also there. And Central Rosebill, Taminoria all pretty much draw lines. So you can say that the top 4 players have been playing very, very tight openings, which could be like the kind of entry requirement for you to kind of maintain a certain lead to kind of break into. So I think after this setup, what I would like to do is to kind of go into specific player analysis, look at some of the games on an individual player basis, and then essentially just share my analysis across maybe some thoughts on the game, both on interesting players that I like to follow, and at the same time the Singapore team that went for this World Championship. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you at the next episode. Goodbye.